So I'm going to tell you three stories, okay? And how much time do I have?
3 minutes.
Well, I'll
3
tell you.
minutes each. 3 minutes each.
I'll take it. I'll take whatever you give me.
Okay.
So these are my three go-to stories, and I make talks to school groups. The first one, this is a day like a Tuesday, and a gentleman had come up and he had a boonie hat on, a shirt that had peace signs all over it, and a peace buckle. There he is, and he's got an artificial arm. And he says to me, the question we get all the time, and we're in a yellow uniform like I have on tonight for this show. He said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yes, I do. Can I help you?" And he said, "Well, what happens to the things that are left at the wall?"
Good
and
question.
I said, "Well, the things that are left at the wall are collected by the Rangers and we volunteers." And I said, they go over to a collection of artifacts that's been ongoing since 1982 when they dedicated the memorial. And they go to a warehouse and they're cataloged and archived and all that. So he seemed satisfied with that. And he said, "Well, I'd like to leave something." And he said, "Would you watch it?" I said, "Sure." So he walks down to the apex of the wall and proceeds to take his arm off. And I said, I'm a camera guy. I'm a photographer. So I happen to have my little camera. It doesn't matter what kind of camera, just whatever works. So I took a picture of what you showed on the screen. And I said to him, if you don't mind, may I take a picture of it? He said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, what's special about this?" And so he told me the story, and you see it. You see the papers inside his arm. That's talking about two sons, and they were are brothers. One was his brother, and he was combat wounded in Vietnam. So anyway, Ronnie, he said to me, "I don't need this arm anymore." Well, I didn't ask the follow-on question, which is why you don't need it. But I was sensitive to that. So he walked away, and that was the end of it. And I took a picture of it. So that's the one story. The second story is a little more unusual. Well, this is the arm was unusual.
Yeah, more unusual than the guy leaving his arm.
Yeah. Well, the other one was, from my perspective, was it just shows you how you need to listen. So this is another sunny morning, and I'm standing at the wall at the apex, and I've got my little fanny pack on, and I'm talking, and a gentleman walks up, and he's got gray hair like me, and his name was Frank something. So we're talking. Well, while we're talking, this young, this middle-aged Vietnamese guy comes up, and ethnically, there he is. You recognize him. His name is Dao, D-A-O. So Ronnie, Dao comes up, and he says the normal question, and then he speaks pretty good English, and he said, "Do you work here?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Were you a soldier?" And I said, "Yes, I was a soldier in Vietnam." So the question you asked and the question I asked, he said, "I was too." So me, dummy Bill here, assuming that he was an ARVN, the ARVN that we worked with and supported.
Right.
I said, "What ARVN unit do you work with, or did you work with?" And he smiled and he shook his head and he said, "No, I was VC." He was VC. So that was the first time I ever met a VC. And he wanted my card, and I have a little card I carried, and then he gave me his card. So he was here for a convention. I emailed Jan Scruggs and I said, "What the hell's going on? Do you have a VC convention going on in DC?" And Jan started laughing, and he said, "Well, you're comrades now." So the follow-on story, and this is the healing power of the wall, and each story is uniquely different. And that's the whole point of this book. And in this situation, Dal started emailing me. He's a photographer, and then he wanted to know in his email if I was the guy that shot him in 19. And I said, "Well, when were you shot?" He said, "In 1971." I said, "No, it wasn't me. I was home by then."
Tell him it was me.
Yeah, it was you. It was Ronnie. Okay, you can claim it.
No thanks. I was there before
anyway,
you.
the bottom
I was
line
there
is,
before you. No.
yeah.
Okay.
So the bottom line is Dal is a world-class consummate photographer. Wow. Goes all over Vietnam. He's a retired general, believe it or not. And we are friends. My two kids, my son and daughter, Todd and Emily, met him in Hanoi, Vietnam when we were there for a veterans delegation in 215. So those are the two unusual ones. And then the third one, and I'll make this quick, is another day, and a lady comes up to me, and her husband's with her, and the lady's about the size of my wife now, Margene, and the lady's she's coming up, and she comes up with her pretty aggressive, and the space, you generally have that human space between talking to people. Well, she's up in my face, and she's about 5'4", and she's got her fist closed.
Whoa.
And she comes up like this with her fist closed, pointing at me, and she doesn't hit me, but she's in my space. And she says to me, "What is it about you Americans?" And I said, "Excuse me?" I took a step back, and she came again towards me in my space again. And she says, "What is it about you Americans? You're willing to go anywhere in the world to defend anybody else's freedom. And why is that?" And she really wanted to know. And her husband.
That question must have shocked you.
It did. I backed away.
It just threw me. That's crazy. That's great.
It shocked me. I backed away. And her husband's hanging back, and her husband doesn't want any part of this conversation. So anyway, I said, "Well, I'll tell you, I don't have any official National Park Service answer or an official volunteer answer, but I said, I'll give you my own." And I said, basically, to me, the most important thing to me is your family. And I said, the second most important thing to any American is freedom. And I said, we believe that everybody should have those opportunities. And I said, that's what we're about as Americans. And she said, "Well, why do you have that attitude or that position?" And I said, "Well, I think it's our founding fathers. It's in our DNA. One could argue it's our Judeo-Christian background, all that stuff." So it seemed to satisfy her. Well, then, Ronnie, this is the icing. So she said, she came back in my space and she said, "Well, I just want to tell you, we sincerely admire you Americans." And I felt about 10 feet tall.
That surprised you.
Yeah, it did. And I said, and what we learn as docents to do is when you do what I call the yakety yak, you always ask, you ask people where they're from, whether you ask out on the front end or the back end. But so I said, "If you don't mind me asking, ma'am, where are you from?" She says, "Israel." So that sort of completes the circle as to why she had that view.
Sure.
So the stories, I can go on and on and on.